Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, August 2nd, and I will just, I suppose, jump right into it. Spent almost all of yesterday, and frankly, I think this unplanned extended vacation is now going to be unplanned and extended even further, because I spent most of yesterday working on my backup server, trying to fix it, trying to recover data, and inevitably screwing things up so bad that it looks like it's time for a full, fresh reinstall. All the work I've ever put into it, ever, pretty much down the drain. It's time just to format Windows, reinstall, and build from square one, and effectively do everything I've ever done that still needs to be done. Now, over what has been 5 years at least in which that server has been running, I guess we also need to play some priests, and we don't need to do a tavern brawl thing, not for the Americas count at least. The new card expansion seems like it is kind of sneaking up on me, and we also are in a position where we don't have a lot of gold. I got the monthly reward. It gave me this gold card and this gold card, which can give me a little bit of dust. And it gave me a new card back, which I think is this one. So we can make that our new card back. But that's kind of where we are at. We're about 1,000 short of opening 50 packs on top of the 12 packs that are sitting here. Rise of the Shadows is not the new expansion, it's Saviors of Oldham. And we can see we can search this and we can actually look at the cards already. So yeah, it seems to me like I need to take a special moment to look at all the new cards, because we can already do that, where this has been the first time this has ever happened. They've been so weird about putting out expansions and announcing this new expansion, going with the cosplayer video to announce new cards as their most recent Hearthstone video instead of another animated Pixar-esque video. Seems like they're getting off-brand, just probably to be cheap and save money. So theoretically, I could be doing a special video series right now. I guess maybe I won't, though. I think what instead I'll do is try tomorrow, maybe. See what I feel like tomorrow. I'm definitely not getting anywhere close to playing a new game at this point. So, like, I was gonna play Torchlight and Torchlight 1, and instead I've got on my table now reinstalling Linux Mint Debian Edition 3, which, you know, it's been 5 years. I was running Linux Mint Debian Edition 2. A lot of features have changed. A lot of default programs have changed in the underside of that. And so, where once I was potentially installing third-party packages that I was having to build from source code, I might get the same functionality just out of the box in a much better supported, much more stable situation. And in all fairness, my backup server, it really was a pile of half-finished experiments and projects. It was always intended for me to teach myself an experiment and use as a test bed on Linux in general, before I built my backup server, which probably was 10 years ago, not 5. The BIOS date is from 5 years ago, so I probably should update that too. The point being there is that it's old. It was always designed to be this test service, this test bed, someplace to make mistakes, to crash it, and it's probably not even the 10th time that I messed up a Linux build on it so bad that it was necessary to start over. Although most of those mess ups were pretty early in my learning experience, it has been mostly ignored, just running along itself fine. The reason I screwed it up to the point of what seems like no return is I was trying to force it from the main stable version into an unstable testing version of the core, the Linux kernel, the core part of the programming, the most important part of a operating system. And the reason I was trying to do that is because I was the backup hard drives were formatted in ZFS file format, which is a file format most people don't use and aren't familiar with. And I was trying to upgrade the version of ZFS's software to support that RAID setup, for lack of a better explanation, and in an effort to use a new feature which was labeled as device removal. Now, device removal as it is in version 8.0 when it was introduced, or 8.1, is not really device removal as you would expect. So you build these RAIDs and you inevitably build them wrong because there are these long text commands, at least the way you have to do it in Linux. Now, if you're using there's a pre-built version of Linux just built around using a bunch of hard drives and making a backup RAID, but it can't really do anything else, so you really wouldn't want to use that software if you're trying to do other things with your server. It can do a few other things, but not as well as I would like. And I don't even remember the name of that software, but suffice it to say, I was not happy with its level of performance when I first tried it. So I comply. So what you would think you would get with a function called device removal is the ability to actually remove hard drives and devices from either a RAID array, which you would understand that would mean that it would have to spend a lot of time to move all the data off that hard drive onto the other hard drives, and it might fill up the other hard drives, and it might just tell you there's actually not enough room. You cannot remove this and maintain a stable RAID array. It really doesn't do that. It seems like it is an extremely limited situation in which you can remove a device, and it's not actually functionally useful. What I did was I accidentally added a hard drive after I found some backups, not particularly even that important backups as far as I could tell, and put it on the RAID array. I said, alright, well, I now need this hard drive to join that RAID array, but I forgot to type in a single word, and I added the hard drives as top level virtual devices to the what they call a Z pool in the ZFS, or the tank might be another phrase I think they used, which means it wasn't a part of the RAID array, but it was connected to the thing that was the wrapper of the RAID array, so I couldn't remove it and then just add it back. And this is how it just always happens. It is a total nightmare using ZFS. It seems pretty stable. It seems like it works. It probably is better than ButterFS, which is still, frankly, in the development stage years later. But it is just when you need to move data, when you need to build a new RAID array, you're inevitably going to need to take some of the backups that are on your hard drives, unless you have an infinite amount of money. And this is the difference between trying to run a backup server as a individual and trying to run a backup server as a corporation. A corporation could easily buy a whole new RAID array computer, just a whole new custom rack server array, and connect that new thing that's already set up to the old thing, and then copy all the old data to the new data. But it has to be more incremental if you're at all on any kind of budget. So you need to be able to take data off one hard drive and put it onto the RAID array, and then add that one hard drive to the RAID array to build it and make it larger, and then take data off the next hard drive and do it in that kind of incremental step. And the fact that this thing isn't, this concept isn't automated in itself is kind of ridiculous. But that is exactly how it goes. So yeah, I screwed up making the RAID array, basically, because of one word in a line of code. And there was no way to recover it. I thought there might be a way to recover it if I forced the kernel, the brain of the operating system, up to a newer version. That way I could force the software up to a new version. I actually did succeed at that point, and it still wouldn't allow me to remove the it still didn't allow me to remove the devices, so that's a full loss. But also in the process of the RAID array being a full loss, where I'm just gonna have to delete it and lose those backups that weren't probably that important anyways, I screwed up the entire Windows install. So at this point, I've got to download the new version of Linux Mint Debian Edition, which is my preferred version. I choose Linux Mint because I like the look of it. I choose the Debian Edition because it is a longer term supported operating system. Debian is what Ubuntu is based on, but it moves a lot slower and is designed to be something that you set up and leave, and that's how if you're lucky enough to have the computer hardware run for 5 years or longer, the software can run pretty well for 5 years. Now, I will fully admit that there's probably some major security flaws and leaks that have not been upgraded in my BIOS, so I probably should upgrade my BIOS. And there probably has been some... That's the wrong priest. That might explain why I didn't win. There were probably a few security upgrades that were not installed in a timely manner on the software, although it does have automatic installation for at least security patches, so I don't think it really was that big of a deal. Debian in particular, as a flavor of Linux, seems to be so slow at adding a new feature that the chance of a bug being introduced because a new update or feature is added is mitigated by the fact that it's probably 3-4 years before that new feature is in Debian, but it's been on other operating systems, other versions of Linux, so people have been looking at it and doing security testing on it. That being said, it does seem like every now and then we hear of security issues where the entirety of the software is just is just like such a mess that 5-10 years down the road somebody says, oh yeah, we knew about this security feature, or the government, the NSA knew about the security feature and just didn't tell anybody about it forever because they wanted to keep using it. It's the concept of putting something on the shelf. They'll use the hacking methods, sources and methods that are the oldest, so if they get caught or exposed, then they can stop using that hacking method and move on to the next oldest one, and they've got a whole shelf of hacking methods that that I'm sure they don't ever use in the wild. Anyways, that's probably more than enough Linux talk than anybody really cares about, but what it does point to is I'm not expecting that I will be working on recording any footage for this weekend, which now it seems like it's been 2-3 weeks, maybe even we may even be more moving into the 4th or 5th week of me just not really doing much, and it sucks. I like computers. I worked in IT. I was an IT guy. I still am an IT guy, but frankly, it kind of sucks when you're all alone and there's nobody around you that knows anything about computers, and you're working on a problem and you're just banging your head against that problem over and over again, and you just kind of don't have a good chance of ever figuring it out, and you're just getting more and more frustrating. It can be incredibly frustrating to work on computers at a certain high experimental level, but then also it gets incredibly frustrating in the IT world when that's not really what you're doing much. Like, a lot of IT jobs are just, alright, I'm going to install this antivirus, I'm going to go through this procedure that everybody does, and that's kind of it. Like, yeah, there are many situations where if you're like a Geek Squad Best Buy guy, you're just running through a series of antivirus scans and things like that, and hardware problem scans, and you're just clicking a button and going. There's many situations where you're at a help desk where people have just forgotten their passwords and you're just resetting passwords all day, and that's really all it. People aren't getting their emails because something screwed up, but even if it were a situation where the screw up on the email is the fault of the email server in the back room, most IT positions, you're not really anywhere at that level that you could actually go work on the email server. You're simply documenting the mistake and giving it over to somebody who is way above you in a whole separate thing, in a whole separate organization. So there's a lot of jobs that are pretend to be IT jobs, but really they are just customer service jobs, and that's the vast majority of it. There's a lot of upselling, a lot of just basic support based on standard procedures with no education needed and no intelligence needed, and if you run into any problems or any trouble or anything that would be interesting whatsoever, you're just forced into handing it over to a person above you, and there might be 12 steps above you before anybody has the authorization to do anything intelligent or creative. That is also very much why you have very much the case of people not really wanting to help you too much, is that either they don't want to help you because they don't know how to, or they don't want to bother to try and help you because it's not the procedure anyway, so they just get in trouble if they did something outside of what the standard operating procedure is.
Job's done.
If you watch the British comedy show, the IT Crowd, the one joke in that series that really is long running and around actually being an IT person is the joke where anytime anybody calls for support, it's "have you tried turning it off and on again," which often kind of is just the solution to a lot of issues with Windows in particular. Linux, not so much. Like, there's kind of a deep dive reason, as I understand it, that Microsoft has encoded a lot of its own operating system apps and a lot of just Microsoft apps in general in such a way that they are accessing programming that is built into the kernel of Windows,
Right away.
which allows a lot of programs to access a part of the operating system they shouldn't. It's the difference between there being a sandbox, which is a great example because that's what it's basically called, a sandboxing. Let's imagine that there was a playground and a sandbox in a park, and then imagine that right next to the sandbox is construction going on with broken glass and rusty nails and 2x4s and all kinds of dangerous things that are used in construction. Although broken glass really isn't used in construction, but nails, 2x4s, heavy machinery, hammers, things like that. I guess I'll just play casual. I think I need to buy myself some time here as I'm rambling on and wasting time. In Windows, effectively, there is no barrier between the playground sandbox and the construction work. There's nothing stopping, or very little. There is things stopping it, but very little, relatively speaking, stopping an application from getting into that construction area. In Linux, the kernel, being the construction area, is built by Linus Torvalds himself specifically to be as minimal as possible. He's incredibly persnickety, to use a phrase, and this is really where it comes down to why he's been accused of being rude and abrupt, in particular. But he's right, but he's also persnickety about people trying to put in code into the kernel space, into the kernel that doesn't belong there, and that would either
Right away.
only speed up the running of a small selection of software, or help one group of software, one very single piece of software, and it shouldn't be in the kernel space, frankly. And so he'll just kind of rudely tell people that sometimes. Although I don't know what he's doing these days. I think he's still on sabbatical.
Right away.
But there certainly have been decades in which the Unix kernel is built around that idea. And if you need something in the kernel space, you add it via a kernel mod, or that is an add-on thing. You don't add it into the kernel proper. Whereas Microsoft is much more of a kowtower to programmers. And if we've got, ooh, is this just how this is going to animate now? Is giant, or is this a visual glitch? I kind of like this. This is a nice, I hope this is the way it does it now. It's just a big bag with the number 10 on it. It's clearly a glitch though, because if they were intending for this graphic to look this way, they would have rasterized this better and smoothed down the jaggy edges here. But yeah, that would be nice. Make it a big bag of gold. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything more to say here. I'm getting a little bit back into doing IT stuff, but I'm also frustrating myself, and it is kind of extremely, how can I say this? It is extremely disheartening, personally. A lot of times when I work on computer stuff and get frustrated, and I'm certainly very frustrated with this, because I think to myself, and this is definitely negative thinking, it's like, I actually kind of hate doing computer stuff. And that doesn't bode well for somebody who spent their entire youth and education working to be a IT guy / computer programmer. Like, for as much education as I have in and around computer stuff, it's not a good position to be in. It really isn't. So what that then compounds onto is a disheartening feeling where it's like, well, you know you like video games, but your YouTube channel is not really taking off. Apparently Game Grumps just made a secondary channel because they full up admitted that that people, that was the wrong one, I meant to play this one. They full up admitted that YouTube does not want gaming channels to succeed. So Game Grumps, while not stopping or anything, is definitely been slowing down ever since they introduced the 10-minute power hour thing. And in part that might be just personally because I haven't been seeing notifications or seeing videos in the feed, but they're certainly shifting their attention away from doing 100% games. Although in fairness, Game Grumps wasn't ever really doing 100% attention to video game footage because they were also running, at least half of them was running a band too. So yeah, when you got this feeling, it's like, man, I kind of hate working for computers, and I'm only really qualified to work with computers, and I love to play video games, but it's impossible to it's close to impossible to make a career out of being a video game critic. It really leaves you in this position where it's like, yeah, you're kind of good for nothing. And that's a super negative thing to say, but yeah, if everything you like to do won't pay, and if everything you hate to do barely pays, you're in the exact same situation I think most people are in the United States, and that's where you end up with so many people. Let's face it, most people are in incredibly dead-end jobs that go nowhere and not their field. And with that, we are done with the Americas account. We may go back and play the Americas account some more, but I don't know. If anything, I guess maybe we could burn through the news and then do those special card reveal videos after this. That might work.
You're back. Come tell us a story or two.
Let's start covering the news though. There's a decent enough amount of news here. I have this watch and learn. I don't want to re-roll it, so we need to get 2 victories with Mage on this. And we need to win here. So, do we have any new cards here? No. So we just need to pick mage cards that might actually help in any way. This kind of might work. This kind of might work. Let's see. This kind of might work. That might just be the best card to play. Frost Nova is not really what I'm looking for. Vaporize. Let's give it that and try that. Let's get rid of that and try that. Be interesting to see if we could polymorph something. But Blizzard would make a lot more sense. So do I want to do 5 damage for 3 mana or 3 damage and freeze? I'm gonna take Pyroblaster. No, actually not. I'm gonna take Flame Strike. I doubt any of those cards are even gonna play any role in this. We'll just get a random victory, I imagine, for no reason. Alright, so let's start going through the games real quick. We have a game here called Mind Switch that looks like it is an MS Paint level graphics. It's $1.99. It's English only. I'm gonna burn through these as much as possible. So less watching the videos, less agonizing over things. I think most of these games are going to be pretty obviously bad. That's typically how this all goes. Let's see. Let's see. Next we have Nyanko Project, which looks like it's an RPG Maker game where you're playing as a cat girl. Looks low effort, doesn't look widescreen. It's free, English, Japanese, and Chinese. No audio in any of them. This may not be particularly an RPG. From the looks of it, it might be like a fighting game, but it's tagged RPG and certainly looks like RPG Maker. So yeah, I'm just gonna wait and end the turn here. Next we have a game on Steam here called Philander, which is tagged as an RPG. This doesn't immediately strike me as an RPG Maker game, it just looks like an RPG game. So, kind of a Diablo-esque game. I don't suspect that this is going to be that good, but I'll be generous enough to put it on the follow list. It kind of prices itself at 99 cents as being probably super short and probably not that good. English only. Yeah. I could be generous and put this on the follow list, but almost certainly what happens is that it leaves the follow list the next step. Oh yeah, I forgot this starts at 20, so by the time I even get around to playing this, I'll be in bad position. Like, if you don't kind of quickly if you don't quickly set up some minions on the field, they'll just run you over. So it would have been better to play this. Let's see, so I wanted this.
The future is ours.
And I want this.
Job's done.
And hopefully this will save me enough. Otakon happens, or I guess it's pronounced Otakon. That's how I always have heard it pronounced, although Otaku on would Otaku on. Yeah, Otaku Con would make more sense as a name. And China Joy happened, so there's
Behold the tools of creation.
there's a lot of work that is gonna happen. Right,
Return to nothing.
there we go. Really don't like this chess game. The fact that they keep bringing it back is crazy. So we've got a few very anime-centric announcements. It's been heavy anime-centric announcements for the past week or so. Well, that's an interesting thing to do. Alright. So I can kill this.
Return to nothing.
And then I could do 2 damage there. Here, here, and here. And there, I guess.
Job's done.
Silencing all my minions just kind of helped me. I don't know why he thought that would have been a smart move. And see, I think I could probably win next turn if I manage to not lose a bunch of enemies.
Marvelous.
Because I can just freeze them and then attack once and then attack a second time. Alright. So we do this. Attack here. And return. So Gamatsu has our first China Joy. Anno Mutationum China Joy 2019 gameplay walkthrough. What is this game? It's, let's see, 25-minute video that I cannot, I don't think, skip because this is playing on some other kind of element. It's a title action RPG set in the metropolis and themed around the fictional SCP Foundation project. Secure, contain, protect. Alright, so I'm gonna let this trailer play and see if there's anything. There we go. So, pixel art looking character, and she's running in her underwear. Yeah, it looks like it's a platformer hack and slash style game. Doesn't look too terrible. Although, and you fight monster robots apparently. A little questionable, certainly. And this is the thing that, with a slight attempt not to get into a full anti-China rant here. How can you have a game in China that follows their censorship policies and has a character, a female character, running around in her underwear, for lack of a better description? Like, how do you do that? China Joy, I believe, is the Sony funded projects, so it's the Japanese company Sony funding game developers in China. I don't know how any game developer company in China, just generally speaking, is not going to eventually, and by eventually I mean rather quickly, feel the force of censorship on what they create, even for projects outside of the Chinese provenance, which has always been the issue. Like, that, in a nutshell, has been what I think the Chinese government wants, and exactly what they have been pushing for, is to have influence of what people can and can't see, play, hear, and how people think, inevitably in the long run, around the world, to the point where Chinese censorship becomes de facto worldwide censorship. And that's straight up with their imperialistic policies. Let's face it, China is acting very imperialistic. They are trying to expand their empire in new ways, short of just conquering land, but they certainly have conquered land too. Right. I think that wins it for me. Nope, I'm one short. So that fire, that flame strike was the card that really changed the game around. Moving on, Gamatsu has In Nightmare gameplay walkthrough, which let's see what it says here. A horror game where the player takes on the role of a young boy wandering on a mysterious dream world. So let's see if we can see. So there's a cutscene of the boy seeing his parents argue, it seems like, and now he's wandering around. I would say this art style immediately does not strike me as the kind of game that should be, the kind of art style that should be in a horror game. I think it's not a lack of understanding of what's going on. Also, the top-down perspective, probably not the best perspective for a horror game, also because ideally you would want to be able to show long, dark hallways with movement or characters coming towards you. If you're not showing any of that, then your game is probably in a weird position. Alright, let's do this. There we go. This one silenced minion allowed me to get victory. As far as this gameplay walkthrough seems, it seems like you're not interacting with anything or running into any kind of enemies. So, as it's being shown now, it seems like all the game is just wandering around a surreal nightmare world, which doesn't even seem like it's much of a nightmare world. Alright, do we have a watch and learn? Thank goodness. Let's get this watch and learn done. That'll give me a great excuse to cover news. There is something to be said about the fact that Sony and PlayStation is funding these Chinese games, and they seem to also be scheduling out announcements in a weird way, that you wouldn't see this done so blatantly and openly normally. You wouldn't really tell
Well played.
developers or indie developers or even small developers under your that you're publishing for that a year from now we're going to have an event called China Joy, and you have to have some kind of gameplay footage to show to us, show off. There probably are certain requirements like that required on game developers in general. They probably do have to make vertical slices to show the publisher all the time, and set dates for that. But for then those vertical slices to be put out and shown publicly, and for a big deal to be built around those vertical slices is limiting
You asked for it.
potential. One would assume some of these China Joy games could get canceled if they get bad reception for what they're showing. And so it's just not a safe keeping things to the vest mentality as far as the way the video game world works and video game development works. Now, I did see somebody write an article a couple of weeks ago saying secrets are dying or secrets don't work in the video game industry. This was a video game journalist or a mainstream video game journalist saying that. I think that's 100% inaccurate. I think more than ever you need secrets. You don't want things leaked out in a half-finished product setting the wrong first impression. When we look at a game like this on Steam, Roll plus Heart, and you see this first impression of what looks like MS Paint level graphics, that's the impression I have of this game. If 6 months to a year from now it came out and all the graphics have been replaced and it was way better, I probably would never get that note. I probably would never give this game a second look. Things like Bloodstained, the Symphony of the Night game, clone game that came out recently. Yeah, I guess that game in part had some bad graphics, and then they put out a new video showing here's the new graphics and changed everything drastically. But I also wouldn't be surprised if there was a percentage of people that never got that far and actually did just think that the original graphics were the way the game was going to look. Alright.
Job's done.
This needs to be damaged. Darn it. I did not play that right. I should have attacked that. Then I could have done so much better. Roll plus Heart, by the way, is $19.99 in English only. It seems to me like it's a terrible looking dating sim game with some kind of dice rolling element. But it's horrible looking, so of course it's not making it to the follow list. Alright. Now we've got that. Alright, so do that, do that, do that. Which is more important, spell damage? Not really.
Get down! Job's Job's done.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Cover Sky. It's a first-person shooter asset flip game. It seems to be a little bit better than most asset flip games, but it's only slightly better. It says it's early access, $3.84 discounted, English with subtitles in Chinese, and no subtitles for anything else, so this feels like it's probably a Chinese game. It's really just priced out of the market, though. Any good first-person shooter is not going to be below $5 before it even launches. Spell damage, I lost that. So
let me show you the arcade.
This one's a real page turner.
in return. So, yep, that's not making it to the fall list. Cover Sky.
Free of that blasted tower.
TechRaptor has an article, The Church in the Darkness Review. The darkness is no fun. I think I heard about this game, but it was a while ago. I think it's like a cult simulator style game, but not done well. Let's see. Yeah, I recall this might have been a game that was shown off either at this year's E3 or actually last year's E3.
I wonder.
They've given it a 4.5 mediocre. Let's see. 2 damage. Let's see, if I did this. And then that means I can go ahead and just get rid of that.
Time runs out on me.
Into return. Yeah, so they gave it a 4.5 mediocre score. The summary is: The Church in the Darkness is a full of bold narrative topics, but the gameplay and presentation fail to match, making it quite difficult to experience the message. Pros: fantastic writing, intriguing commentary, top of the level voice acting. Cons: branching narrative is a fluke, most actions are inconsequential, gameplay isn't anything special, and the random personalities don't really differ that much. So I would almost certainly assume what happened here is that had they tried to make The Church in the Darkness more like a Telltale game instead of a more involved gameplay style game, they would have succeeded better that way. Oh man, I should have drawn cards first. I could have gotten the spell damage up some more. Let's see. Or had they made The Church in the Darkness more of a linear story, if it was a Far Cry style story with just first person shooting around it, that probably would work better too. Seriously, am I not gonna do one bit of damage to this guy? Alright. So how do we want to deal with this? We can just win. That's all we needed to do. So yeah, this game came out with basically no advertising whatsoever, and it's not well received. Surprise, surprise. And I don't believe that's the only game today that we will talk about that came out with basically no advertisement around it after being mentioned in some small part at an E3 or a big announcement. Next we have Gematsu
versus
Evo Tinction China Joy 2017 gameplay
It
walkthrough.
is on.
Basically every game has the same walkthrough. Let's see. It is a third-person stealth hacking game. Provides a complex and dynamic stealth experience. So let's see. 6 minutes of footage here. This looks like 3D graphics, which is interesting and nice. Although in a third-person hacking game, I don't know how important that really is. See, if we just saw what hacking in the game is you're just crouching down and looking at something, and that's pretty much it. I don't know why this is third person. I don't know why that's your main gameplay mechanic. That feels like a secondary gameplay mechanic for sure. What we would need to see is some kind of robots or sentry guards, some kind of enemies attack you in some kind of like weapon. I did have in my mind a thought for a more narratively focused hacking style game.
Hello.
I guess it would have been a little bit like Bully, which I believe Bully 2 has been announced. Surprise. That's a little bit of a surprise, but not a lot. I guess the weird thing, if I'm recalling correctly, and I didn't dream this whole thing up,
Runs out on me.
Bully 2 will bring back the main character from the first game, whereas I was fairly certain at one point they were saying Bully 2 would have a female protagonist. It would only be fair, and certainly one could argue that girls are just as good, if not better, at being bullies and bullying in a different way by far than boys are. Although when you actually look at what bullying was as a game, it's actually not as much of a equivalent to a GTA game as you would think. You're not just so easily allowed and open to invoking random violence on innocent bystanders. Let's see, how can we protect ourselves so we don't die? If I play this, then I could do this.
Wonder.
Right.
I'll be just like you.
Yeah, Evo Tinction, as far as that video goes, didn't show me anything of interest. I really have to just take everything with a grain of salt as far as these style of games.
The future is ours.
These games that are developed by unknown people. Let's face it, these are unknown Chinese video game developers, and they really haven't been proven. And in a lot of cases, they're trying to show us something that look like major AAA games when they should be showing us small indie games. The best they could do is do that 1 in a million Hellblade Sasuna Sacrifice style game that's short and simplistic but looks very pretty, and that really was a 1 in a million situation. Next we have a Gematsu article. This game, but weirdly, is tagged PC on top of being PlayStation 4, where everything else I think has been PS4. Fist, F.I. dot so on and so on, as they walk through. And this is where you're playing as a rabbit in a mech in a robot suit or powered armor suit, I guess might be a better descriptor. Let's see. This looks like this is just a platformer beat 'em up Metroidvania game where the player controls a rabbit equipped with a giant mechanical arm on his back against an evil robot army. This is the level of game that I suspect people could do. A unproven, relatively new developer could do. The game made by Chair, Shadow Complex, for instance, was exactly a game like this, and it was, in my opinion, rather good.
Let me show you the arcade.
But it didn't prove itself to be to be super crazy with what it was doing either. If anything, this kind of art style with Metroidvania games, I really hate whatever video player this is, by the way. Don't tell me this is some new YouTube upgrade. The idea that we still are getting 8-bit retro graphics on Metroidvania games more often than not is a problem. I think the Unity 2.5D animation style should be the standard. I don't see how you get away from that. Right. So here's 2 8s.
Taste my blade.
And
Ta-da! More soul.
Job done.
in return. So I'm a little pumped for Fist as a game. It actually looks like it can possibly be a good game, whereas the others are questionable at best. Speaking of questionable at best, is this guy gonna be able to beat me? We do this, and then this,
Just like you.
and this.
Job's done.
Speaking of questionable at best, we have Car Soccer World Cup, which is just what is the card game that's actually good called? Rocket League. It's just a Rocket League clone. This is $2.39 discounted English and German. I do own Rocket League. I hope I get around to playing it at some point. That we are getting. I'm getting to a weird point where a lot of these games that I own on Steam are maybe a little bit more aspirational purchases than actual purchases with a actual schedule as far as when I'm going to get around to playing them. I think at this point we are done. Yeah. Let's play one game and see if we can get a win streak. And we'll just chase a win streak with the mage. If not, then we'll move over to the Asian account. There's a game that is out for Xbox One and Windows 10 called As Divine Menace. I've never heard of it. It is weird, certainly, when Major Nelson tweets out these games that are specifically links to the Xbox Live or the Windows 10 Play Anywhere game website. But on a rare occasion, there is something that comes out on Xbox Live or the or Windows 10 store, and I don't see it. So I am learning things and getting some things new.
Time runs out on me.
Send this turn. This next game is Tag Nudity and is just an RPG Maker game, so I'll show it quickly here. This is not nudity I'm showing. Tina, swordswoman of the Scarlet Prison. She's in like a bikini top that you can barely see the strap of, with a coat over her. But yeah, the game itself is just basically this. This is discounted to $11.99. English and Chinese. It's probably not that good, even though it's rated positively here. Is there anything here that would sell me on this? No, because I see screens like this and that just tells me RPG. And I don't want to play a mediocre RPG. The Made game I talked about in the last video, last stream, turned out I found more information about it. Turned out there's actually, it's mostly just a virtual sex simulator. And that's where you get into this weird position with a lot of the way things are presented. This is going to be one of those rare occasions in which I'm going to admit I might be wrong. I think I might be wrong about the Steam storefront needing to be family friendly, even if it's an adult game. Maybe it would be more informative and more helpful if the game is uncensored, which one assumes that the game probably is censored on Steam. But if there is a full uncensored game on Steam, it might be more helpful and informative to have full uncensored images as the thumbnails too. That way you actually know what you're getting into. Because what I constantly run into is an issue where I don't know when something is tagged with nudity or sexual content, whether it is a scene or one scene per female love interest or male love interest, or if the entire game is a 3D posing modeling software, which is what the Made game seemed to be. And I haven't even seen a lot of 3D posing modeling software games go on sale in a long time. They existed certainly in the past. But I think most people really eventually realize that that kind of content doesn't sell, because it requires the viewer to be very creative when they probably don't want to be that creative. Kind of in the same way that Hatsune Miku games that come out are not the Vocaloid software. There is a small percentage of people who can use the Vocaloid software and make good songs using Hatsune Miku and the Vocaloid software. But there's a lot more people that like Hatsune Miku and would just play the games with the songs that had already been pre-made. Let's see. Moving on with the news. Gamatsu has an article. Fantasy action game The Welkin World Rebels is coming to the PS4. I kind of like this art style. It looks kind of like Zelda Breath of the Wild. Let's see, high-speed combat, combo attacks, diverse monsters, and various puzzles. So, this is maybe another China Joy game, but it's tagged China Joy. But this actually looks like a indie style game that can actually sell. If you told me this was just another Darksiders game, it would look very, very similar to a Darksiders game. And there might be reason for that. That's kind of the thing that people don't really know, is that sometimes games just look like other games that have come out because that company worked in some small part on that game, or that company knew that game was in development, or that company simply idolized those games and thus wanted to make more. Yeah, so I like the way the Welcome World looks. So we're approaching maybe a 50-50 on China Joy, which is not bad odds, frankly, as far as games that interest me personally. Gamatsu has an article, roguelike game Blazing Beaks is coming to PS4. This looks like Nuclear Throne. It's another China Joy game, and it's already on Steam. So instead of clicking and watching the video here, let's just go to their Steam page and see where we are. We have very positive top-down twin stick shooter style game.
I wonder.
Fighting animals for $14.99. Single player, local multiplayer, local co-op. This doesn't look terrible for a rogue-like game. I don't know how many rogue-like games I really want to play, but I'll put it on the follow list.
I wonder.
I'll think about it. It's already rated very positively. So I really don't have a good excuse not to do it. Alright.
Time runs out on me.
I need this to hit once. There we go. By the way, I suppose it's worth admitting I'm still far deep down a track of watching basically every bar rescue episode that exists. This Paramount channel that it's on, which maybe the Paramount channel used to be Spike or something and they've changed the name, that would be my guess, seems to air on a daily basis no less than 6 to 9 episodes. And I think they're hour-long episodes too, so pretty much it's all bar rescue all day. And when it seems like they're not airing bar rescue, they're either airing some kind of cop show or movies from Paramount Network. But yeah, I'm deep down the well on that, still watching it like crazy.
Unity, precision, perfection.
Which is certainly also wasting my time. And not getting me any closer to playing a new game. But yeah, I don't know how much of that really has to do with me distracting myself because I just need a little bit of break, or whether it has to do with just me distracting myself because I actually am enjoying the TV show. I imagine, give it a month, I will be done with it. I'll probably have seen every episode, and then I'll just lock it into this is what I'm watching when it comes out new, and then that'll be it. Meanwhile, I've really backed off on listening to a lot of podcasts and things, so there was some elements that I have stopped doing as far as what I'm doing with my free time. Moving on, back to video game news. Cyberpunk themed visual novel Wint Refractor is coming to PS4. Read minds by hacking brain implants. This looks very, very very anime. And I feel like this might be a China Joy logo in particular, because I feel like I saw this in the background of a different game. It has a Steam page too, so we can kind of look and see it at it there, but the thing about Chinese, in particular visual novels, is that they haven't been great. Alright, we need to win 5 games or 3 more games in any mode. We need to win 3 games with a Shaman and Warlock. We need to play 6 Divine Shielded minions, which means we should start with Paladin. And we'll leave the Tavern Brawl for Monday. And we're gonna really only do 1 episode today, so we need to just burn through the news. So here's the game on Steam. It's not out yet. You can see there's some interesting images, but also some questions here, because there's no video here. Like, they've got no video up. You have this image, which is also the thumbnail image. You have this image, which is a different art style than this is, slightly. And then you have this image, which this might be how you're hacking brain implants and reading people's thoughts. And this might be the main gameplay screen. You might see more of this than anything else. This is probably the hacking minigame. And so I don't know if this really is even a visual novel. They're tagging it as an RPG. So you might just move from area to area, see a few randomly generated enemies, go into these hacking mini games, which might just be like a card battle style game. Yeah, there's a lot of questions here. Also, English language not supported, according to Steam. Will that change, or are all of these games actually only coming to China? Although that then just makes even less sense. Why make such a big deal and make these style of games for the Chinese market? Wait, actually, let's play ranked. Let's not play casual. I guess it is a big question mark up in the air as far as what do the Chinese people actually want for the people in China that can actually play games. So maybe Chinese developers don't even know their own market, because their market is so new and so rough, in a rough position. It could explain why you would go with a anime looking aesthetic. But I don't know if that's gonna sell, and I don't know if that's the way to go. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point most anime looking games get censored and banned in China for favor of some new concept of a Chinese art, or traditional Chinese art.
Stored energy.
Moving on, Gematsu has an article. 3 vs 3 basketball game Project Dunk is coming to the PS4. This is an interesting collection of characters for this basketball game, particularly when you recognize that there's actually 7 people in the image. You have 1 character here, a person here with a robot that I assume they're a team. That's 2. This girl, 3. This guy, this big fat guy, that's 4. This girl, that's 5. If the robot is with her, then this panda-headed muscle man makes 6. But if either of these robots are separate, you're up to 7. And the way I see it, I think this is a 7th character, because this looks like a human legs with a robot helmet.
Photonic flux.
I've got to actually play it if I'm going to actually play. So let's look at the trailer here. So I like the art style. What was that weight they just said? Height 160 centimeters, weight 53 kilograms. Well, I don't know that measurement at all. kind of like the art style, and a 3-on-3 basketball game done well is something that should come out eventually for everyone around the world. There aren't a ton of them that don't immediately get full of microtransactions and FIFA'd by EA. Which, by the way, I'm not sure I have a story for this, but EA is the guy in charge of EA came out and said, oh, we're not so hot, or we're not interested in putting things like The Sims on the Switch because we think all of our fan base has the Switch and something else, so they can just get it on a better, more powerful system, and that they're just throwing some shade on the Switch, in part almost directly saying that the reason why we don't want our games on the Switch is because we can't full microtransactions because the Switch Online service is not set up to do all of those microtransaction type things, and it's not an always on online service.
I want you, and you, and you.
Next, we have the survival game Undying coming to the PS4, according to Gametsu. I kind of like this art style in stationary. Dead body here. One would assume the husband and father of this couple, but I am not sure how well that art style plays in a game. It's a zombie game, I guess that kind of makes sense. So it's a survival game like The Last of Us with less graphics and no faces. This feels simplistic. This feels like an asset flip game. Even if you're trying to tell an interesting story there, you've really got to get the graphics higher so people know that it isn't just going to be like every other possible zombie game, asset flip game that is available on Steam. On the Steam page here, yeah. If I just was to blatantly look at this when it comes out, or later in 2020, I don't see how this stands apart. There's no price here. This one is English and French and Chinese. This is almost like a perfect example of what The Last of Us lost. This also feels like it's probably going to be an escort mission from the beginning to the end of the game, which nobody likes escort missions. But yeah, the thing that the number one thing that The Walking Dead Telltale games lost was the need to have you play as a first-person or third-person shooter game, fighting zombies constantly just so you have a ridiculous gameplay mechanic in it. They just got rid of that gameplay mechanic and boiled down The Walking Dead to dialogue conversations and the occasional puzzle or collection game. There we go. There we go. So yeah, I'm not really impressed by Undying.
You say hard.
Gamatsu has an article here. SNK to announce a new Neo Geo hardware soon. A new Neo Geo experience like no other, end quote. I mean, what does this really mean though? Is this some new hardware that would play Neo Geo style games in arcades? Wherever there are arcades still? Or is this just a a emulator box and a Raspberry Pi type software? Is it a Neo Geo Mini that they're going to try to sell to a home market? Do you really need special hardware for a arcade machine if you are making arcade machines, or can you just pretty easily have that content run off a standard PC? There we go. Well, I'm getting victories here, but I'm not playing the Divine Shield minions, and I don't think I am going to actually be able to. So I think I need to play this custom paladin instead. Right. Next we have a game on Steam called Grayscale, which looks like a black and white game of no interest. Looks like it's a puzzle kind of platformer game. From the looks of it, it looks pretty simplistic.
I will fight with honor.
The video probably explains it a little bit better, but it doesn't seem like it explains it that well. Now, you run, and when you run, you make a box that's gray, and then you die. Apparently. Yeah, I can't even figure out what this game is. $4.99 English and Japanese. It doesn't look good, whatever it is. Let's leave it at that. Let's see. Game of Sutra has that article I was talking about. EA's CEO, the Switch isn't the player's first choice for multi-platform EA games. Basically, meaning he doesn't want to bring the Sims in particular and other games like The Sims to the Switch, because the Switch can't be laden with microtransactions. I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually internal negotiation conversations happening where they are trying to negotiate for the ability to have microtransactions, and Nintendo is saying, no, we don't allow microtransactions. That's not something we do. Jeez. Well, I guess I can get some win streaks going on here. I don't know if there's any Divine Shield minions in this deck either. Let's try again. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Ooblet devs break down their Epic Games Store exclusivity decision. There's a quote here. Now we can just focus on making the game without worrying about keeping the lights on. End quote. This is a probably flat narrative way of cleaning up their post. From what I heard, it started off very smug and cheeky, and was not a good way to announce that, yes, Ooblets is going to be an Epic Games Store exclusive. I think what you have to say here is if you're going to do the Epic Store exclusive as a game developer, you put at the beginning, too long didn't read, we're going to be an Epic Game exclusive until a certain amount of time, and then you start off with as much sincerity and softness as you can speak to say it was a long, hard decision. We had to weigh many factors. Unfortunately, our financials were just not in a place where we could release this game at its best possible launch state. If we did not receive extra funding, Epic offered us the best deal as far as extra funding, and we because of that, we are going to have a better game that released. We understand people's frustration and dislike of exclusives in general and the Epic Store specifically, but we had to weigh those pros and cons, and we feel this is the best decision that will have everyone who eventually plays the game on whatever platform most satisfied. Say something like that and you're pretty golden. People are still going to hate it, but you're not going to give yourself extra ammunition, give your detractors extra ammunition against yourself. If you try to play it off cheeky, if you try to play it off coy, if you try to pretend like there isn't a major amount of backlash against people being Epic Store exclusives, then you're just being ridiculous and you're not going to serve yourself well. And it's also worth mentioning that people sometimes, quite often, screw themselves over and set up themselves in a way that they can't particularly get out of a deal or avoid certain deals. And so if you've kickstarted and you say you're going to give Steam keys out, I think you should honor your word and give those Steam keys out as of the launch date, not change Steam keys to Epic Store keys or promise Steam keys 6 months down the line. It's not uncommon for people to totally promise one thing that then they have to deliver because they've committed to it. And some basic sticking to your the basic concept of sticking to your word needs to be followed and done a lot more than it actually is.
Converting stored energy. Converting stored energy.
There you go. Next we have a game on Steam called The Beast of Grivadan. This looks weirdly drawn. I think it's tagged an RPG, but I think this is probably mostly a text-based game. And it definitely feels like somebody is either drawing digitally on a pad for each specific scene, or somebody is drawing or painting in reality and just scanning it in. That the interesting art aside, though, the gameplay itself doesn't look that good. And when you look at this scene in particular, this does not look good at all. And this scene is, this might just be photoshopped stuff too. This might be, oh, I stole a Photoshop image and then I made it all black. I stole this image off of Google. I stole this image and then I stole this image. Like, there's a major inconsistency between this art style and this art style. English language is not supported on this. It's $1.99. It's Russian only. It's probably a Russian low effort game. I won't immediately assume that it's a troll game. There you go.
What is my purpose?
Let's see. So yeah, not quality enough for that game to be on the wish list or the fall list. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Revenue and bookings are up at Zynga despite slowing active users on mobile. That's actually surprising. How revenue and bookings are up, I don't know. I don't even know what the phrase bookings would mean in this scenario. Service portfolio including games like Empires and Puzzles and Boards with Friends. Boards with Friends. So maybe people just went back to playing Words with Friends.
Converting stored energy.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Heroes of Shayola. This looks like this is probably an RPG Maker garbage game. Yep. $2.99 discounted, English only. Nothing more needs to be said about that. It's not making it to the fall list. Let's see.
Let me think.
Well, does this echo as 1? Or does this echo as 3? Nope. Alright, next we have a game on Steam called Lightstep Chronicles. Seems like it's a eyeball that looks a lot like the eye from Portal 2. So I don't know if this is like a space game where you just
denied.
it says it's an adventure. It seems like you're kind of controlling and making decisions. You're playing as the AI. It's $8.49 discounted. It's English with full audio, it says. I'm gonna put this on the fall list just because I can't really wrap my head around what this game actually is. What I thought it might be is a VR game, but looking over here, that's not the case. So I'll see what the reception is on that and see if there's anything we can do with that. This is like the only Divine Shield minion I have. Next, we have a game on Steam called Ziminator, which is this a point-and-click adventure game or is this a troll game? It seems like it's probably a troll game. It's not visually appealing. Seems like it's an infinite runner shooter type game. $4.24 discounted English and Czech. Interesting combination there. English and Czech in this case I think is as close to English and Russian, so I suspect this might be a Russian troll game.
Reporting for duty.
And regardless of what it is, it's certainly not something that interests me. Next game is tag sexual content, so let's just click through all the thumbnails first. Next we have a game called Cold Hearts, which is apparently a visual novel about refrigerators, loneliness, and the meaning of life, which sounds like it's a troll game to me. If you were going to personify electrical objects, appliances, you'd actually want to make them look like a person. This feels a lot like Hatoful Boyfriend, where it's a pigeon dating game. This is coming soon. It says it's English only. I don't know why I'm looking at it if it's coming soon. How that got on the Twitter feed. Regardless, it's probably not one of the top 10 quality visual novels out there, so it's not something that I'm focused or interested in playing. Next, we have a game on Steam called Deep Sea Tycoon Diver's Paradise. Is there a game here, or is this just one of many underwater games that that aren't that interesting. It seems simplistic, like it might be a very old game. Seems like it might be, actually, looking at the date. So, yeah, with the name like Tycoon, this probably came out during the Tycoon fad, when everything was a Tycoon game. I think I can make an executive decision here and say that this is not something that would really interest me. $9.74 discounted, English only. There's a better game if you're going to be a diver just swimming around that has come out since this game came out by far. So
Access denied.
it doesn't make any real sense to try and deal with those kind of games separately, or play an older version of a game that has a better, newer version or a similar style game. I don't remember the name of that game, but certainly there's been a couple of them. Game of Sutra has an article. A lot of people have been making big news out of this. Ninja, one of Twitch's top streamers, has left the platform for Mixer. Meanwhile, like 3 people, apparently recently, 3 male streamers have been banned from Twitch that are big enough to be mentioned, and apparently somebody decided a female decided they needed to breastfeed on camera, and Twitch did nothing about that, which, whatever. I mean, frankly, there's something to be said about broadcasting your video while breastfeeding when you could either stop your stream or figure out how to turn your camera off, even if it's just as simple as throwing a towel over or a piece of cloth over your camera while you're breastfeeding. There's nothing wrong with breastfeeding. I'm not going to complain about somebody breastfeeding in public, but I am going to complain if somebody starts breastfeeding in public in front of a camera that is being broadcast to the internet, because then that feels like you're making more of a porno, and unless that's what you're selling and unless that's what's acceptable on that platform, that seems like a weird double standard, because there definitely have been people on Twitch men who have just been kicked off for being shirtless, even for a moment. So, as for Ninja going to Mixer, I was going to kind of look at what Mixer looks like right now, but I'd like to see maybe Mixer survive, but I really don't have a lot of faith in Microsoft making this system work. Yeah, if Mixer did become the replacement for YouTube, I guess that would be nice. It would allow for a potential actual competitor, since Twitch is clearly not really going to be the competitor. But I also have to question whether Mixer is just going to be abandoned or not. Unlike Google, I would say Microsoft at the very least does kind of stick with things a little bit longer than Google does. So there is a chance. Moving on though, we have a game called The Backrooms. We had a different game called The Backrooms come out just a few days ago. So clearly everybody's trying to get into these meme games. 1% off for 98 cents. English only, a bunch of meme achievements, logos, but not a lot of achievements. Yeah, I still don't think any real story behind the concept of The Backrooms. that would justify it being turned into a video game. And so, yeah, that is something that's definitely not going to ever happen. At least when you had the creepy tall man meme, they could figure out how to put a video game around that. I've forgotten the name of that creepy tall man too. I just gotta keep on playing. It's like either you play as one paladin or as the other, or you build a new paladin deck and have a third paladin deck for divine shields. Next we have a game on Steam called Sare. I guess that's how you pronounce that. Inception, S-A-R-E.
Luther versus Thrall.
Here we're watching a video that either froze up.
With honor.
No, it didn't froze up. The game itself froze up. Look, it pauses in the exact same point as soon as it does physics and explosion. So, yeah, this is a Mordhau style clone game. You're running around attacking things, and it's not running smoothly. Doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look like a full asset flip game. But it's not early access either. $2.39 discounted, English only, with a third-party user license agreement. I have to say no to it. They anti-sold me on this game by showing me a video where the physics lock up and releasing it as a finished product. Also releasing it as a finished product at a pretty low price point. So, moving on, we have a game on Steam called Fighter's Legacy. This might be a good fighting game, it might not. It's almost impossible to tell since I know basically nothing about fighting games, and I
will fight with honor.
Don't have the ability to actually play this game. Looks like maybe you get a couple of female characters and then it's mostly guys. The number of fighters is big enough. Early access, $8.49 discounted. It's in a weird bundle. It's got a bunch of language support. I'll put this on the fall list and see if people like it. That's really about as much as I can ever do with fighting games. And we may get to the point where we start running into a lot more fighting games coming out, and I'll have to determine a better system. Next, we have a game on Steam called More and More, which looks to me to be a RPG Maker style game with maybe some dark thematic imagery, but still just an RPG style game. And let's face it, most RPG Maker games have dark themes. $2.09 discounted, English and Italian, which is an odd combination. Just in the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Dark Roll, which this is probably just a Marble Madness clone using asset flips and 3D imagery. The concept in itself is not bad. The implementation will be the element that matters. Marble Madness itself probably wasn't that great of a game, but it was a good enough game to convince people not to just rage quit it immediately and never play it again. Seems to be some element where there's a boss fight here, and it seems to be that there's an element where you change your surface so you get spray painted or you touch other kinds of marbles. This is free to play and it's English only. So if this looks interesting, it looks like it might be a bit of a Glover game too, inspired by Glover. which is a really old game. Dark Roll is there if you're interested. I don't cover free to play games, so I'll just leave it at that. I don't believe it has any microtransactions or any app purchases, so it's just a free game. I wish they would make that difference more apparent. Next we have a game on Steam called Hide or Die. It's already mixed. I believe this was a game that was... Nope, this is a different game. There was a game that looks like this that was announced before, and I guess this is not that. A hide and seek style game that is early access, $19.99. Bunch of languages, 20 achievements. Let's see if we can see the negative reviews and what people are upset about. The most helpful negative review states, oops, that's not what I intended to do.
To battle!
As someone who backed the game, you don't get it. It's not worth it in its current state. The game is incredibly buggy. Animations, movement, and combat all feel stiff, and overall the game just needs a lot more work before it's worth getting. So the most helpful review is somebody, I kickstarted this game is garbage. Hide or die. Alright. Fair enough. And believable. Let's see. Let's play this.
Converting stored have enough mana.
And do this.
Reporting for duty. The battle! The battle!
Still trying to burn through a lot of games. Next we have a game on Steam called Tokyo Snap, which seems to be a photography game, although it's tagged as a visual novel game, and it's flat 2D, 2.5D characters. This is interesting. It's almost like, what could you do to make a Pokemon Snap game without Pokemon? And most of the characters seem to be like lacking in fashion or personality, so they're just shadows, and then inside of them are hiding a slightly roughly animated, like, this is not great animation. It looks somewhat reminiscent of what is that, the girl with the monkey, and you can talk to these people too. Dora the Explorer, that's what I'm trying to think of. Yeah, seems like the animation style is slightly reminiscent of that, which it's weird that they're doing a live action Dora the Explorer game. No, live action movie of Dora the Explorer. So Tokyo Snap is $4.99. It's bundled with another game. It's English with full audio, it says, as 30 achievements. I think there might be something to this concept. If you can just write some basic storyline and basic interactions, because it feels like you probably are just wandering around under a time limit and taking pictures and talking to people. And if you're just wandering around having casual conversations, that's not too hard to write, although maybe harder than I think. But really, I think this is actually Pokemon Snap. There's an attempt here with the characters moving around to frame multiple people in the right place and take their picture when they're in the right pose. Which, that's a cool idea. So I'm gonna put Tokyo Snap on the follow list. We'll see if other people see what I'm seeing, or if I'm if I'm misinterpreting the situation. Let's move on. Next we have a game on Steam called All That Remains, a story about a child's future. This feels like this is a low effort asset flip walking simulator game, and I wouldn't be surprised if there might be some weird like anti-abortion message in it by the title alone.
Unity.
You know, something like, surprise, this person's life you've been following never happened. This is English and German.
Reporting for duty.
Yeah, I don't see anything here. It's discounted to $8.49. Yeah, I don't see anything there that interests me. Let's see. I'm trying to burn through all these stories. TechRaptor has this article, CMON announces Cyberpunk 2077 Afterlight, the card game. I don't believe this is a digital card game. This is a, I think, real-world card game that is in development to be released alongside the Cyberpunk 2077 game when it comes out. So, yeah, it's tagged under tabletop games and tabletop news. From TechRaptor. I should. I kind of figured that was the case. TechRaptor has a review here. Forged of Blood review, a bloody mess. This is a strategy game of some sort I've never even heard of. So we just scroll down to the bottom, and I bet it's below a 5.5 average. Forged of Blood has a solid foundation, but the game's mechanics don't always mesh together, often causing too many problems with the game's own ambition. Let's see. This. End the turn. The pros are a fair amount of depth and excellent narrative filled with good ideas. The cons are sometimes it's overly complex, poor visuals and audio presentation, and they were held back by poor implementation. This is, whoever reviewed this game is the one that puts all the ellipses in the pros and cons, which makes it weird to read. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. Enduring popularity of key franchises helped boost sales and profits at Capcom. So, Devil May Cry 5, Monster Hunter World, and Resident Evil 2, all major successes in my book, boosted sales at Capcom. So all Capcom has to do is not release a terrible Devil May Cry spin-off that nobody wants, or a terrible Monster Hunter game spin-off that nobody wants, or a terrible Resident Evil game spin-off that nobody wants. And particularly for Resident Evil games, that's probably a tall order for Capcom, because they love to
Follow the rules.
they love to make terrible Resident Evil spin-offs. I'm dead no matter what, so I played as much as I could. See, next we have a game on Steam called Collapsed. This looks like it has like a major tech tree style game. It's tagged as a platformer action game, but it must have some roguelike elements where you're unlocking a lot of abilities. I see that it's mostly positive right now. And it does look slightly better animated than your standard platformer. There's a lot of flashing lights, and so I'm a little bit iffy. It seems like it might be overly complex in the mechanics and items and systems, too. I guess I'll put it on the follow list. It's discounted to $13.49. Supports a bunch of languages and it's full audio in every language too, according to their Steam page. So I need to play 3 more Divine Shield minions. I think there are more Divine Shield minions slightly in this Paladin deck than the others, and I need to get more victories. So yeah, I'll put Collapse on follow list and give it some more time. Next we have a game called Jupiter Hell, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter game. It's rated positive. It says it's not an action game. No. They say it's a roguelike turn-based game.
I will fight
Time
with
moves
honor.
when you do. Well, then that might change my mind about the game a little bit, but I'm not sure in a positive way. So you can play it really fast if you know exactly what you're doing right, but if you don't, you move very slow. And it's kind of more like a Crypt of the Necrodancer style game, just set to a more generic visual backdrop of being in space or something, or being in hell. Can't even tell. It looks like you're in space, but then the game's called Jupiter Hell. Its early access is $22.49. I think that price alone turns me off of this game so much. Like, that is way too expensive for an early access game that is a turn-based tactical placement game. 20 achievements, English with full audio, allegedly. I'm not being sold visually for this game for $22. No, that is asking too much.
Job done.
So yeah, I'm not even gonna put it on the follow list. Maybe that's something I should. Maybe I'll find that it actually is good later, but we'll see. Next we have a game on Steam called We Need to Go Deeper, which seems like it's some kind of weirdly animated game where you're playing on a submarine and you're in a hack and slash experience. Your life seems to always be up.
Must move quickly.
This looks weird, and in its weirdness, I don't know how this breaks down. Let's see. I guess where this breaks down is it's rated very positively. So people that do understand what it is seem to like it. I bet it's a short run game where you make it to a tier of the ocean 1 fathom deeper, and then you do some upgrades and then go again. This is $15.99, English full audio. I'd have to just do more research, and I'm trying to burn through games so fast. I'll put this on the follow list and we'll see how this works.
Converting stored energy. Converting stored energy.
Let's go!
Reporting for duty.
I don't know what I did there, but I didn't play that the way I thought I was going to play that. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. EA expects The Sims Forum to deliver net bookings on par with Apex Legends. This is an extremely high expectation, and we've seen EA set extremely high expectations before and then cancel a series. Seems like The Sims in particular as a series is really only surviving based on the fact that it has a very popular, rabid fan base that seem to be happy to allow themselves to get screwed over pretty, to put it simply. Like, if the Sims players weren't such suckers and didn't buy The Sims 3, for instance, or all the add-on Sims elements, which honestly you probably spend $500-600 to get everything for the Sims 3. The Sims series probably would get canceled. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sims series does get canceled. Remember, it was only a couple of years ago that people were saying that Maxis, the developers of The Sims, was on the verge of being shut down, and a majority of the people had left. I think Maxis also. I'd have to double check on that. Moving on, we have a game on Steam, Raiders of the Lost Island. It says it's a action indie casual game. Seems like it might be a player versus player game. If there's a single player element on it, I kind of like the art style. And if there's a single player element in an actual game here, where you're, I guess, going from island to island and potentially just looting for more collectibles and pickups, there might be something here. What I'm seeing from the island layouts, though, is it seems pretty redundant and just kind of randomly generated. Its early access is $12.99. It says it's single player, but it seems to me to be multiplayer focused. English full audio. The level layout is not selling this game for me, unfortunately. Yeah, so I'm not going to bother to put it on the follow list. Let's see.
I must move quickly.
Let's see. I can see the end, but we're not anywhere close to it. Next, we have a game on Steam called Clans to Kingdoms. This looks like a strategy game of no real quality. Every single screenshot, as I'm flicking through them, except for this one where they couldn't even edit their video, seems to be a very generic forested area with very generic images. Why would I play this instead of something like Ages of the Empires, which is better known and probably way better a game? $19.99, English only. Nothing more needs to be said about that. It's not making it to the follow list. Next, we have a game on Steam called Rise the Vinio Provenance, which, why you would bother to put no rating, ESRB no rating, which is not a actual ESRB symbol at the beginning of your trailer, makes no sense. This looks like a low effort asset flip space game or fly around game. Regardless of what it is, it's not interesting visually. Early access for discounted to $13.49. Third party account and third party EULA, a bunch of languages. Total garbage. Alright.
Reporting for duty.
Gamma Sutra has an article. Pokemon Go surpasses 1 billion downloads worldwide. I don't know why counting downloads is specifically a valid metric, but let's face it, most metrics aren't valid. Because, sure, I wouldn't be surprised if people have downloaded Pokemon Go to 5, 6, 7 different devices in the lifetime. You drop your phone, you get a new phone, you install it on a tablet. I could probably easily install a game no short of 3 times before I would even have to cycle through a new device. If it's an Android game, yeah, I could. I've got like 3 Android devices I could boot up and install a game to, and then uninstall and install again, which would then be another download. And you could really cheat that metric by saying it's downloaded a million times, but in actuality, you're counting every update as a separate download. So every time Pokemon Go updates, their entire player base technically downloads the game again. Moving on, no, Gamatsu has an article. Ghostbusters, the video game remastered, launches October 4th. Okay. We knew this game was coming. It's weird a little bit that they are trying to re-release this game remastered in October. It feels like they probably are going to try and re-release the next either re-release an old Ghostbusters movies in the theaters in October, or release the next Ghostbusters, which is supposed to be the spiritual successor of Ghostbusters 2, ignoring Ghostbusters 2016. It's,
Runs out on me.
I mean, even if you think about it, if Ghostbusters 2016 came out in 2016, it's only been 3 years. You could easily try for 4-year separation there.
Reporting for duty.
Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Ooblets is now an Epic Games Store exclusive. We already talked about this, so we don't really need to cover this article. But if you're interested, it's out there. Gamma Sutra has this article. We'll watch 2 of Elsnore's developers discuss the tragic Shakespeare simulator. So Elsnore, apparently a game I've never heard of, so I'm gonna have to look it up and let's see. So the game is on Steam, so I'll have to look up this game, Elsnore. Do I want to play inherently a Shakespeare tragedy simulator? I don't know. Like, it's a weird idea, certainly, to say the least, because I just don't know if people in general or me personally has any interest in Shakespeare other than a surface level of we know Shakespeare existed and that is kind of that. There's really we know Shakespeare existed. We have heard of Romeo and Juliet in general and some other things, but there's never been really an attempt to there really has never been an attempt to make a Romeo and Juliet style game, because it's easy enough to write your own story that's about star-crossed lovers and would be more relatable than trying to write about the Montagues and the Capulets. And there are other Shakespeare stories, but again, not major reasons to try and translate them directly. But people barely even try to do the Shakespeare plays these days, in favor of just standard plays, easier plays, or modern plays. Moving on, THQ Nordic tweeted out. Now, I do have the old Twitter plugin, which might be affecting. I might be missing some tweets, so I'm a little concerned about that. But I bet I'm missing just a bunch of replies and things that don't matter. THQ Nordic announced Darksiders: The Forbidden Land features an entirely new storyline set in the Darksiders universe. This is a tabletop game, it seems, that they're selling, and not a video game. Meanwhile, THQ Nordic's tweets are all over the place because they're promoting so many games, or possibly not promoting enough of any of the games. Alright.
I wonder.
Let's do this, and then this, and this.
Reporting for duty.
Let's see. Come on, next page. Tech Raptor has an article, Dry Drowning Review, Gritty Cyberpunk Murders. Let's scroll down to the bottom. This was a interesting visual game that I kind of questioned if it was anything more than a visual novel. Tech Raptor is giving it a 7.0, very good. In spite of its shoddy localization, Dry Drowning is a compelling blend of visual novel and adventure game, providing a gritty cyberpunk world to explore and a brutal case to uncover, and Orwellian politics to navigate. Prose, stylish presentation, compelling cyberpunk world, engaging central mystery, cons, rough localization, and too much trial and error. So I guess I'll leave this article up, and that way I can use that review to best determine whether
For justice.
whether I need to put that on the follow list, which I think I do. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Devil's Hunt launches September 17th for PC and Q1 2020 for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. What game is this though? It's a Steam page. Can we just watch the video and try and figure out what it is? Sexual content and nudity. This feels like this is a major adult, maybe Devil May Cry style game. Seems like, yeah. This seems like this is a heavily inspired by Devil May Cry game. Who's making this? 1C Entertainment. Don't think I've ever heard of 1C Entertainment.
You win this.
So, Devil's Hunt from 1C Entertainment, publisher. This, I suppose I can put on the follow list. It's a little early, but not by that much. Looks interesting. It's a little odd that this hasn't been talked about more. So, we might be in a weird position with that too. I know there's another daily quest that I need to do that's play as something different, but it's easier for me to just keep on playing as a paladin and try and get the Divine Shield minions played and get victories as a paladin.
Uther versus Rexa.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Flame Labyrinth.
I will
This
fight
also
with
looks
honor.
like a turn-based roguelike style game, but much worse visually. Yeah, definitely not sold here. Early access discounted for $12.59, which is too expensive. Says it has full English audio. Nothing here needs to be said. On top of that, that's not gonna make it. Game of Sutra has an article. Tencent is aiding with the localization and online services for the Switch's move into China. No duh. Nintendo has to work with Tencent because the government's forcing them to. And so then Tencent has to, at that point, and Nintendo's going to force them to actually do some work and aid with localization and do the online service. Says that would have to be inside of the Great Firewall, China, which, like, no duh. Like, This is kind of a no-duh story all around. Because everything that's being stated in the title is something that you could either have easily inferred or should have already known.
Astounding.
And I am definitely not pulled into reading any further into the article, even though it's an extremely short article, as most video game articles are. TechRaptor has an article here. Lightstep Chronicles review, tread lightly. Lightstep is that game I just saw, actually. And what's funny is that the videos I'm seeing, the screenshots I'm seeing now, are different than the ones on the game. They gave it a 6.5 good. Lightstep Chronicles features some great characters and world building, but some lame puzzles and weird design choices drag it down. Pros are great characters and world building looks fantastic, awesome effects. Cons, lame puzzles, tough to read dialogue boxes, and no choices. So, I guess I'm about 50-50 on that. I guess it doesn't matter because I was just going to put it on the follow list anyways.
Let me
So,
think.
it doesn't really change anything if I just continue with my previous plan and put Lightstep on the follow list. And we'll see if the mob votes and people who actually purchase the game, see how they feel about it. TechRaptor has an article here. Rare Sugimori interviews translated detailed beta Pokemon from Gen 5. I guess if you're interested in Pokemon, this might be a article to look up. I'm not that big into Pokemon, so I'm not gonna bother with that. Alright. This one. And then
Converting stored energy
this one.
for justice.
And then that. Oh man. This is a Divine Shield. I could have played that. I should have played that. Don't kill me. Please don't kill me this turn so I can play that. It'd be better if I was paying attention. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Creative Assembly and NetEase to partner up to bring Total War to China. NetEase being the company only slightly smaller than Tencent, and again built up and given a position in the video game industry that I don't feel like they really deserve. Although I believe NetEase did make PUBG or something, so they do actually have something that is in part a stamp of quality. Or NetEase does League of Legends or something. I know there's something that they do. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. The Japanese Resident Evil Ambassador Program is recruiting testers for in-development title. So they're looking for, they call it Biohazard in Japan. Interesting.
Let the hunt begin. I will
So
fight
a new
with honor.
Biohazard, a new Resident Evil game is in development. That's not a big surprise. The question will come down to, is this a game going further in the series? Or is this a game that is remaking Resident Evil 3 or Code Veronica or something? Or is this a side story completely? Or is it a complete reboot? Which wouldn't be a terrible thought either. Like I wouldn't be upset if it turned out that if they decided to just nuke the entire planet and have only a small selection of survivors come out 1,000 years later and have the Resident Evil universe reboot that way. That might work. Although that would be really weird. It would be easier just to reboot the series and say here's a reboot where the Raccoon City incident never happened and Umbrella did something completely different. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Google is developing a game and app subscription service called Play Pass. Notice how Google Stadia is also basically a game and app subscription service. So why does Google have two different services that are competing against each other? That makes no sense at all. This is why you can't really support or trust any Google products, is that there's just no head chef in the kitchen. Nobody's steering the ship. One department decides to make a game service, another department decides to make a game service. Neither one of them gets supported by management, and they both get canceled rather quickly. Gamasutra has the Evo, or Anime Evo 2019. Is Anime Evo different than Evo? Well, they have the schedule here, which looks like it's a bunch of fighting games. And if I was really gonna start playing fighting games, I probably should make sense to write down which of the fighting games are listed here. I'm assuming the jump off is just an introduction. What is Vampire Savior top 4? None of these look too outlandish as far as games. And it ends with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Seems alright. Well, there's a schedule there. It's probably not going to be very helpful or informative to me right now. Unfortunately, I'm just not at that point. Alright. I guess I can't show footage of Ninja on Mixer because that almost certainly would get flagged immediately. Info. Can we click that? I guess we could probably show this. And yeah. Well, here's what Mixer looks like, and Ninja's on Mixer, I suppose. Seems like it's got a video player, seems like it's got a chat going, seems like it's got a description, and things like that. So there's definitely enough here right now on Mixer to, if Ninja and other big streamers can bring people around, seems like that will work. If people do start going to Mixer.
Let me
looking, you can sort by games. It looks very, with the exception of it being blue in theme, it looks very much like what Twitch looks like to me. Which is still way better, I guess. Just the ability to search by games is way more upfront than YouTube or YouTube Gaming ever was. Yeah, so Mixer might be the new Twitch, and then if it succeeds enough, it might be the new YouTube.
Well fought. I concede.
Alright, let's come back here. Let's see where we are. We would need a Divine Shield minion, and we need a Shaman or Warlock victory. So let's play a little Warlock casual and Shaman casual. TechRaptor has an article here. Riot Games officially announces a new fighting game. Remember, Riot Games was the website that was the game developer that's in all kinds of hot water with the mainstream video game media for being a hostile work environment, which it in the end did seem to be accurate. Once enough important information came out and reasonable complaints came out. So yeah, we'll see what this fighting game is when we get some real details, which we don't. We have a Gematsu article. Riot Games and Radiant Entertainment are developing a new fighting game. It looks like it's robot fighters. By that screenshot, that's pretty much it. Street Fighter is adding Poison, E Honda, and one other character. By the way, I don't know if I have that article up, but yeah. I'm a little surprised that those wouldn't be default characters, but somehow they aren't. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Rick Rack, which seems to be a racing game with old school graphics. I'm not sure this is the kind of game I'd ever want to play though. I remember playing Windows 95 style games where you're racing and crashing into things most of the time, and you really could never succeed. I feel like this is exactly a game like that where you just get frustrated and crash all the time. It's $8 discounted, English full audio, 41 achievements. That's way too many achievements. It's probably an achievement game if I was to guess. So So I'm not going to put that on the follow list at the danger of missing some good quality game. Next we have a game on Steam called Hidden Fears Moonlight Edition. Is this a hidden object game? Excuse me. Man, I just popped my back bad. Yeah, this feels like this is probably an adventure game / hidden object game. If it has absolutely no hidden object element in it. No, a thrilling hidden object adventure is what it says. $3.74. It looks like the frame rate is terrible on the game also. English and German. Yeah, doesn't need to be on the
Put this apple on your head.
wish list, follow list.
As you command.
Let's see, I have about 10 or 20 more games or articles. Next we have a game on Steam called Room 40, which is labeled free to play. Looks like it's maybe a puzzle game, but mostly text, and really looks like it's an RPG Maker game. It's really hiding the fact that it's an RPG Maker game. The price is right at free, I guess. 21 achievements, English only, but doesn't look like it's a quality product that actually needs to exist. Alright. See, next we have a game on Steam called Tally Poo the Game, which looks like it's probably an asset flip first person shooter. Looks like it's not well frame rated. They sped up all the video, but let's just look at the screenshots. Seems to suffer from some dark screenshot syndrome. It seems to be asset flips all over the place. How you get from a frozen cabin area to a underground subway is questionable. $24.99, third party EULA, supposedly English full audio. I'm not sold on that. I am definitely not sold on
What's that
that.
on your head?
Moving on, let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Forged of Blood. It's a turn-based tactical RPG.
Oh!
Let's see.
They'll never know what hit 'em.
Was this a game we saw a review for? I think it was, and people didn't like it, but then there's positive reviews here. Might have been a Tech Raptor review on this. Even if there wasn't a review though, this visually it looks complicated and uninteresting to me. Again, why play this instead of Age of Empires? $29.99 English full audio. Yeah. Nope. That's another no for me.
What is my purpose?
Okay, Pitchy, go get him!
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. Minoria launches August 27th for PC and later for consoles. This is a Dungeon Entertainment Momodora series spiritual successor. You can kind of tell by the art style that it's a spiritual successor from Momodora, which is the platforming game. Platforming Metroidvania-esque game with hack and slash elements. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Although, really kind of not super helpful. I guess there is a Steam page for it, so I can put it on the follow list now, but it's not really that actionable information until it actually comes out. Let's see. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Doling's Invasion, which seems to be a Bubble Bobble clone. It doesn't look terrible and has maybe some elements there that would actually make it an interesting game. And if these screenshots would load up. This feels like it has some polish on it. So, discounted to $9.49. English and Turkish full audio, and then several other languages. I think I'm gonna put this on the follow list and just see how people, if people buy it, if people like it. Let's see. Can't really do anything else. Gamatsu has an article. Multiplayer arena fighter game Mighty Fight Federation has been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This is another game that I guess has a Steam page, but I don't think I need to put that on the follow list prematurely. Probably don't need to put any of them. Yep, this looks like it's a player versus player kind of 3D Smash Brothers style game. Not anything that I'm particularly super hot on. It looks very neon and bright too, and that's usually not the style of game I'm interested in looking at it for a long amount of time. Or any amount of time. Alright, let's try the Murloc Shaman this time. Gamatsu has an article here. Digimon Re-Arise is coming to the West in 2019. A friendship digivolving RPG story of your old friends and new faces. So, I don't recognize any of these characters. or this Digimon, or this Digimon. So I imagine this is way after I last saw a Digimon. I do think that's Bakumon, so I recognize him. But I don't recognize any of these human characters or any of these Digimon either. So, it's a smartphone game coming to the West for iOS and Android. Alright, but seems like they dropped the ball with Digimon, and now they're trying to reintroduce Digimon to a new generation. And I think it's going to be really, really hard for that to work. And I don't know if Re-Arise is more closer to something like Pokemon Masters. I don't think it's a walking game like Pokemon Go. For a second there, I thought I was going to have to reboot the launcher.
Thrall versus Thrall.
I'm not really in the mood at this point to try any more mobile games. Destiny Child, the game that I am still stupidly playing, is having a collaboration event with a game called Brown Dust. And so to try and get the rewards, I installed this game Brown Dust and immediately hated it. And it's just because the game doesn't play itself. That's really the only reason I hate it. Is it's a simplistic tactical kind of placement strategy game where you have to push more buttons than I care to push. It does play itself eventually, but it's just another gacha game with the art style. It's not as upfront or obvious about it. Destiny Child also introduced the final chapter for season 1 of the story mode, so far in the Korean version they're up to season 3. So there's an actual story that you go through over time, but it's really nothing worth mentioning. Next we have a game on Steam called Rumia in the Darkness. This looks like a MS Paint level graphics RPG game. It's 59 cents discounted English, Japanese, and Chinese. I'd assume it's a Chinese game. It's not making it to the fall list though. So I'm going to do this. Nice. And then return. We got some articles here. More articles than games really look at. So Gamatsu has the Ys 9 Monstrum Nox details boost and extra skill systems. So if you want to learn more about Ys 9 as it's still in development, you can read that article. I'm not going to go over it. Let's see. This. And this. Gamatsu has an article here. God Eater 3 version 1.45 update is now available. EX time attack missions have been added. So if you're playing God Eater 3, that game came out and then was forgotten more than it probably deserved to be forgotten. I imagine that is just the plight of anime looking games when there are so many mainstream video game journalists that don't want to talk or acknowledge anime looking games exist, and thus they don't ever give them any coverage. But in fairness, Giant Bomb did cover God Eater 3. They just Giant Bomb at this point barely covers any game, and their influence is questionable. Next we have a game on Steam called Hamsterdam. which seems to be maybe a collection of mini games and fight mechanics, quick time events. I'm actually having a hard time figuring out what this is, but it looks very cutely animated, so I'm willing to put it on the follow list. It's $6.39 discounted, English only. Let's put it on the follow list and see if people like it, and if people like it, I don't really see a need to do much else. That and somebody can hit that. I might as well just take the victories. That's what we're trying to wrap up here. Gamatsu has an article over here. Love Our Demo is now available in Japan. You can play the first 5 days in this visual novel story. It'll launch for the PS4 March 14th in Japan. Actually, it's not labeled as a visual novel. It might be more of a straight up dating simulator game. Of course, it's on the PlayStation, so who knows how interesting the story would be. This. And this. And then this. It's like I've got so many Murlocs. Murlocs for days. Yeah, I think we could play maybe one more game and then I'm gonna have to play off screen. And yeah, if anybody's been on the chat today, nope. Standard Friday stream. Nobody on the chat on Fridays. If I could move my schedule around, which I really can't, I would consider maybe doing Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays or Sundays, but I don't know if that would be any better. I still feel like there'd be one day out of that week that would just be dead. And I don't want to stream back to back for sure. Guess I can hold on to that. Next we have a game on Steam called Chasing Nebula. It looks like an MS Paint level graphics game. It's not good, clearly. It's $2.54 discounted, English only. That doesn't need to be on the list, of course. TechRaptor has an article. GameStop is reportedly laying off over 50 employees as part of a reorganization. These, I believe, were all regional managers, which a regional manager is kind of not kind of a middle management game level, as I understand it. So I imagine even more people are not getting reported, but are being laid off all the time from GameStop, and it's just kind of more evidence that GameStop is flailing to maintain relevancy and maintain good business, a good successful business. TechRaptor has the same article. EA's CEO blames Switch port performance for lack of support, which really it means that he's been all over the place as it's been reported. He blames the Switch because of its poor performance for the lack of EA support. He blames the lack of what he perceives the lack of popularity. He blames the lack of online support. So there's several things he's blaming for the reasons that more EA games are not coming to the Switch. Not that we really even need more EA games coming to the Switch, because most EA games are garbage anyways, full of microtransactions and such. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here. Model debut #Nicola has a teaser trailer. This is apparently a model simulation game due out for the Switch November 1st in Japan. So another fashion game of sorts. Fashion, hair, and makeup. Let's see what this looks like. Live action commercial. Yeah, that does not look well done. This is that same thing where if a game feels like it's targeted towards a female demographic, then the game inherently has no budget and looks terrible. This visually looks really, really bad. And that art style, this art style, in no way is representative of what the game looks like. It's a shame, but not particularly a surprise either. Let's see, this. This. And so if I hit this, and hit this, and then return.
The future is clear. Your demise be near.
I do have that article. Street Fighter V Arcade Edition adds E-Honda Lucia. This is E-Honda. This is Lucia and Poison. Now, why didn't they just put it as Lucia, E-Honda, and Poison in the order that they're shown on August 4th? So I don't know who Lucia is. She's a newer character. And I guess Poison is not actually from the Street Fighter series. E-Honda is, though. So, interesting. So Lucia might not be from that series either. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to really add to that. Next we have a game on Steam called Polyrun, which is just a low-effort Infinite Runner game. We haven't been seeing a lot of Infinite Runner games flood the Steam market, so this might be the beginning of a new trend. $4.49 discounted, English only. Obviously not quality enough to deserve to be on the follow list by a mile. Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article. Nintendo 3DS is ending its YouTube app support in the near future. I really didn't even know YouTube had an app on the 3DS, but it does go to show that support for the 3DS is starting to wind down. It certainly would make sense if people had a 3DS to be able to watch streaming services, to get more life out of your item, but out of your that'll get me a couple more, I guess. Interesting. So if I could get just one more charge minion and then play this, I could win. Or 5, 10, 15, 20. Actually, I could just play now if I can survive this turn, which doesn't seem like I can. Right. So we have about 4 more articles. I think it's not worth it to start a new game at this point. I do have to get all of these daily quests done though, so I will have to play a little off screen. Play 2 more Divine Shield minions and win 2 more games with Shaman the Warlock. Meanwhile, news-wise, Gamatsu has an article. Project Sakura Wars launches December 12th in Japan. Latest details, trailer, and battle gameplay. We're going to get drips of information about Project Sakura Wars for a long time. I suppose it is a question if the Project Sakura Wars series is very similar to the what is the Three Houses game that came out from the Nintendo console. Yeah, if that's the case, then well, I guess there is really nothing to say there, because I was already intending to to follow and probably play Project Sakura Wars, at least the newest one. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. No surprise, Riot makes Teamfight Tactics a permanent League of Legends mode. Apparently it was extremely popular. Is it a auto chess style of game? I would guess it is. I don't play League of Legends, of course. And apparently there wasn't as much announcements from Otakon as there was from China Joy, because the only article I seem to have here is this TechRaptor article. 3 new titles from Manga Gamer announced at Otakon. So 3 visual novels basically that will be sold in uncensored versions on their website, and if they continue the way they are going, censored versions on Steam if Steam allows them to do that. And then that puts me at the Humble Bundle website. I don't think there will be a new games bundle. The Crusader Kings bundle was the latest one. That was a terrible bundle. The Hooked on Multiplayer bundle has 3 days left. And yeah, that's the only games bundles they have. And I could see new tweets. Since it's a weekend, it might be somewhat worthwhile for me to scroll down my Twitter feed just to make sure nothing amazing has happened. Although, like, amazing is relative these days. You have the United States ending their nuclear treaty pact with Russia abruptly. It happened earlier this morning, and it's like, okay, yeah, anything and everything can happen at this point. Doesn't look like there's actually anything new. Again, maybe the plugin I'm using to change Twitter to look the way it used to is changing the order of tweets, however, so who could tell. That's going to be it for this recording and this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.